and welcome to Discussing Fitchburg Now. I'm your host, Sam Squailia. You're watching this on Fitchburg Access Television, brought to you from the Workers Credit Union studios. Happy 420. In light of the occasion of April 20th, we are doing a whole show discussion on cannabis, both adult use and medical. We're going to talk about the benefits of medical cannabis. We're going to talk about the different options that you have for adult use, both adult use and for medical cannabis. We're going to talk about different issues that there are at the state level and at the federal level when it comes to cannabis with the state of Massachusetts and other states where we have legalized cannabis. And I have brought together many experts within the field to have this discussion. So we're having this roundtable discussion. Up first, we are going to be discussing, we have experts and founders of dispensaries and owners, and we have people that work in the field. And then in the second half of the show, we're going to be talking more specifically about medical cannabis. So I'm going to have everyone just kind of introduce themselves going this way. How about start with you, Gene?
All right, yeah, so my name is Gene Ray. I'm the VP of Laboratory at Garden Remedies. Been there for almost 6 years. Been a beautiful journey.
Right in Fitchburg.
My name is Caroline Pino, and I am the founder and CEO of STEM in Haverhill. We were the first female economic empowerment applicant to open in the state, and that was about 2 years ago.
Nice.
My name is Devin Alexander, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Rolling Relief. We are the first Black-owned, provisionally licensed marijuana delivery operator in Massachusetts, and I'm also a graduate of the first cohort of the state's social equity program, as well as the vice president of the Massachusetts Cannabis Association for Delivery.
Hi, I'm Mike Bray. I'm the president and co-founder of Deep Roots Craft Cannabis. We're a micro-business cultivation and manufacturing operation out of Uxbridge. We're still pre-operational. And I'm also the founder of the Massachusetts Social Consumption Advancement Coalition, where we're working on bringing social consumption establishments to Massachusetts and ensuring that they can be profitable for the operators.
Social consumption, that's something that the state had been talking about pre-pandemic, but really I haven't seen much action on the social consumption front.
We're getting there. There's some movement happening that needed to take place at the legislative level. There was a small fix that needed to happen that would allow towns to opt into the program, and that's passed. And now our next goal is to work with the actual Cannabis Control Commission commissioners and staff on fixing the regulations to ensure that the operators can run successful and vibrant businesses.
Let's start, that's a good segue into, let's just start with what are our legal options when it comes to cannabis consumption in the state of Massachusetts? What are we allowed to do with cannabis, and how are we allowed to purchase it?
I mean, I can jump on that. I mean, as far as, you can purchase it anywhere, either at a dispensary or have a delivery service that delivers it to your home. As far as consumption goes, right now, it's only your private residence or other private property, unless you're a medical patient, and then there's some protection for consuming on public property. However, if you live in Section 8 housing or any other federal government subsidized housing, there is nowhere where it's legal for you to consume cannabis that you're being taxed 20% at.
Right. And so the delivery option, is that officially an option now in Massachusetts?
Yes, it's officially an option now in Massachusetts. There's multiple types of delivery license types. The very first one is known as the courier license. That's when the delivery business has to contract with an adult use retailer, take on all their product prepackaged, and everything they don't sell at the end of the day, they have to bring back to that retailer. So Massachusetts is very unique because they made delivery exclusively for equity applicants for the first couple of years. So if you're going to be receiving adult use delivery, it's going to be from a majority owned equity applicant. And then there's the second delivery license type, which Rolling Relief is pursuing, known as the delivery operator, which allows us to go strictly to cultivators, product manufacturers, micro businesses, buy in bulk and store at our facility overnight. So that just rolled out. Literally the first one just started on April 1st for the delivery operator.
But the delivery operator.
But the couriers have been operating since July of 2021.
So that sounds good with the social equity, because it seems like with the first rollout of the licensing, it seemed like social equity didn't seem to be at the top of the concern or really even ability for operators, because over the many months or years that it takes to get a license, and or during that time you need to be renting a space and paying a lot of money for design and licensure and just the cost to do the application.
Yeah, I think the intention was in the right place when legislation was put together around social equity. It was part of the discussion, but in many ways, and sadly, it's been I think a miss by the state of Massachusetts, because there's so few equity operators that were able to get up and running based on the amount of hurdles that you have to overcome in order just to get to the finish line to open. In our own instance in Haverhill, we fought angry neighbors, we fought our town tooth and nail, we had painful discussions with our city councilors just to get to the start line, and just to be able to submit our application to the state, which took an obscene amount of time. So we probably opened a year later than we originally anticipated. It was about 2.5 years from the moment that we had the idea, like, oh, we're going to do this, to actually opening our doors.
Yep. Where Garden Remedies started in Fitchburg before, pre any of this adult use legislation.
Yes, we did. So I know we opened our first doors in 2016, even though our retail is in Newton, but our cultivation facility is here in Fitchburg. And then so with the whole discussion about social equity, so we started a catalyst program, I would say in 2018, 2019. And we actually had Carolyn as one of the in the Argyle class, really, and it was really cool to see. And so talking with her and the other applicants that were involved, it was a lot of red tape in the very beginning. And then so as years progressed, and you see a lot more social equity applicants actually flourish, which is actually a really cool thing to see, because you have very like-minded people to get medicine out there to any and everyone all over the state. So it's really fun to see it. Then obviously with your progression, it's been awesome. Yeah.
And the impact of the war on drugs really hurt a lot of people, and the social equity portion is really to help kind of heal those communities that were really hurt by the decades-long war on drugs, right?
Exactly, and when you look at those communities, they're the Black and Brown communities. The American Civil Liberties Union made a study that says even though African Americans and Caucasians both use cannabis at similar rates, African Americans are 4 times more likely than their Caucasian counterparts to be arrested. So when you talk about disproportionately impacted communities, you're talking about the Black and Brown communities. In the Boston area, the median household income, is not the income, the net worth is $8,
Oh, because most people are in debt.
Exactly. And so when it comes time to fundraise, the first round of fundraising is friends and family. But how can you go to your friends and family if you guys are all crabs in the same bucket, which leads people to predatory lending, predatory investors, because cannabis is still federally legal, so we can't go and get traditional bank loans.
And I was just going to jump in and say that kind of segues into another part of legislation that just passed, which is the Social Equity Loan Fund, which is super important. And they're still going to be squabbling over exactly how much is going to go into it. But, Dev brings up an important point. Even with the social consumption, that's set aside for social equity, economic empowerment as well. Making sure that loan fund at the state level is available to entrepreneurs is so important, because you can so easily spend 6 figures just in the pre-licensing phase, and that kind of capital is not available to people who are that fit into those categories. So something has to give.
I think Chairman Hoffman recently said something like the state of New York has $200 million in their social equity loan or grant fund, and the state of Massachusetts, they don't have any yet, but they're talking about maybe 10.
Yeah, and that's just not going to cut it.
Which is that can handle maybe 3 applicants.
And I think part of the problem specifically that I've seen in my community of Haverhill is we are an area that has been disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs, and to not have the local community acknowledge that or embrace that or really care about social equity has been very disheartening. It's like we have to fight for social equity, and they don't really care and really just want to know how much money the city is going to get. And I think that, I mean, and the money for the community is an important thing with the taxes, and I think, you know, that's warranted. But where it becomes problematic for so many operators is with the local 3% impact fee. And the impact fee, as the legislation says, must be directly correlated to actual costs that a community has you know, faced by hosting a cannabis business. And these communities are being really hard pressed to identify what those actually are. And so I think it's important that we as operators continue to confront that, because if those fees are not warranted by communities, we could be paying our employees more, we can be charging less for product and getting you know, cannabis into the hands of people that need it, that can't afford to come in and spend 50, 60, some dispensaries are charging $70 an eighth. So I think there's a real reckoning that we need to come to and continue to confront this in our communities as operators.
Definitely.
Yeah, Fitchburg's an area of disproportionate impact, right?
Correct,
Yes.
yeah, there's 29 that the CCC is deemed in total, and Fitchburg, Haverhill, and my hometown of Quincy all fit into those 29. And we've seen recently with community impact fees, the town of Northampton waived those, and just recently Cambridge as well.
And
you know.
Ames, City of Amesbury as well.
And Lee, I'm pretty sure as well, is out
Uxbridge
there.
was considering it
Uxbridge.
too.
Yeah, well, because what we have seen in the past, 2 years that retail shops have been open, you've
Sky
seen,
has fallen.
you've really not heard any real impacts
Well,
to the
yeah,
community.
And I would
Any,
actually-
at least not any negative
it's all
impacts
positive.
to the
I would
community.
actually argue that they're incredibly positive impacts.
We've had the people from Ethos Cannabis come and volunteer at our community garden. We've had local Roots people in Fitchburg come and help out at different events. And, you know, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
we kind of have a new pool of volunteers.
Definitely.
Yes, and thank you for shining a light on that as a city official as well, because it's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's part of the application process as well. So every cannabis business, regardless of license type, has to create a positive impact plan saying how they're going to positively impact their community. So literally, people should be begging for cannabis businesses to be shut up in their town, because you're creating jobs, you're creating safety, you're making safe product readily available to the consumer, and that's what it really comes down to.
Yeah, and Fitchburg voted to allow 40% of the alcohol licenses for cannabis retail. So that would be 8 of the 35 liquor stores that we're allowed to have. 8 in addition, we have cannabis. Yep.
Yeah,
So when you shop, let's talk about, you know, going to shop and what kind of options we have at these when our consumers show up at the store. So, you know, back in the day, I don't know, in the 70s or whatever, you had, you know, the bud and you had the joint, right? But nowadays there's so much more options available and different strains of the cannabis that treat different ailments or make different effects, right?
Yeah, so I think this is such a huge discussion that we could probably talk about for hours. We have over like 170 different SKUs on our menu. But what's interesting is that it's such a new market that people are coming in and they just want the highest THC percentage. And what we're really trying to do at STEM, and we just actually launched today on 420, a bud bar where you can like inspect, see the terpene content of each flower and start shopping as a more discerned, you know, consumer. That what is a terpene? Let's talk about that. What, you know, it's the ability to, you know, that I heard the analogy recently, like THC is almost like the gas pedal, but the terpenes are like what allow you to like cruise into different lanes and really hone in on your cannabis experience, because some of the nicest flower that I've consumed isn't necessarily the highest THC percentage. So I think within the host of products, people are shopping in a very specific way right now, but it'll be interesting to see how that navigates and changes over the coming weeks and coming months as the industry progresses.
Yeah, it's a lot of variety that's out there. As you stated, like in the 70s or 80s or whatnot, it was just a bag of weed. And then so everyone can kind of make their own quality assessment, whether this smells great or whether it smells bad. So you kind of make your own decision if you want to consume it or not. And then and now going to all of these dispensaries, like there's so many options, so many different strains, and then so it can the information can sometimes become convoluted as terms of like what do I want, what do I pick, or whatnot, because of course there's always just a simple black and white categorization of indica sativa.
Yeah,
But
yeah. The indica,
so
couch,
Yeah.
and sativa, I don't know, makes you more
Like it's the creative,
awake.
the uplifting.
That's the common. That's the common.
That's the combination, but that's the thing that's like consumers, that's kind of their reference point. Like that's what they hear, that's what they know, that's what they want to come in and see, but it's kind of like up to kind of market leaders to be able to kind of give them more information without all of the kind of technical jargon or whatnot, because when you think about cannabis as a natural product, there's so many compounds, terpenes, and all of this, and sometimes this information is very foreign to most people. And so it's like, what's the best way to really explain this? It's like, hey, how about you just smell it? Or whatnot, kind of going back to the whole like nostalgia base. Yeah. So it's one of those fun things. We were actually just talking in the green room.
I'm dying to jump on this.
Yeah,
oh my God, I'm
jump in. Like, it's one of those things where it's that like it's one of these social things, because even as we were just talking in the green room, we were happy just to kind of have like weed in front of us just to kind of talk about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which we have some products. We have products here.
And I just, the thing with the strains, right? A lot of people get like tied up in the strains because there's a lot of them have really silly names.
Purple haze.
And what a lot of it goes back to, and an easy way to explain to consumers is that compare this to heirloom tomatoes, right?
Yeah.
You know exactly what a Cherokee purple tomato is because that tomato was bred above ground. This, apricot Thunder F was bred in some dude's basement and decided that this is what he wanted to name it because he was just a random stoner. But that same exact genetic profile very well may be named something else that somebody else named in the middle of somewhere else's basement. So we're coming together over the next 10 years or so. You're really going to get to see more around flavor profile, terpene profile, and less around these names that we know now. And it's going to be a growing experience.
So more of like on the nutrition facts,
Yes.
maybe the chemistry facts of different cannabis items.
Yep, you're going to say, wow, this strain has such and such a percent limonene and such a percent apinene, so I know this is how it's going to affect me. And it's not going to be this strange name. I really think that that's the direction we're going to go in.
Because right now on the label it tells you the percentage THC, which is capped at 5% per.
Oh, that's just for
edibles.
That's just for
edibles.
5 milligrams.
5 milligrams
per
Yeah.
serving.
per serving,
100
and how much
milligrams in
percent per
100
5
milligrams
milligrams for adult use?
Oh, you mean for so you
The
can have
THC
100 milligrams
part,
in like this bar,
Yeah.
chocolate bar, could be 100 milligrams, and it's broken up into 5 milligram segments that are easily
Feed that
snapped.
20-piece chocolate bar.
Yeah.
So like
And-
per piece would be 5 milligrams.
And what's in each 5 milligram serving?
So it would be 5 milligrams would pretty much refer to THC. So
Yeah.
so it would be 5 milligrams THC per piece, right? So as you mentioned, that like one particular package itself would be 100 milligrams. So this is on like the recreational side. On the medical side, it can kind of vary. But when you kind of go into concentrates or flour, it's pretty much what it is. So when we have to get things tested by third-party testing laboratories, and when they give us back that information in terms of COA or a certificate of analysis, it kind of breaks down like the information in terms of how much THC, or more specifically, how much THCA is in this flour. So typically you will see something like, I'm not even sure if it's the percentage on here, but yeah, so THCA at 26.8%. So that means that that 1 gram of this bud would be 268 milligrams of THC in this bud here. So like, so on the edible side is more controlled in terms of dosage, but in terms of flour and concentrate, it's pretty much like what it is in the actual strain.
It's natural. It's in its natural state, but it specifically tells you the amount of THC, THCA, and whatever other
because we
specific.
There's 114 or so
Compounds?
cannabinoids.
Oh, it's
maybe
it's
more
so
now
many.
than that. Now that keep
it's
coming
so
up.
many. But this is the thing, we didn't have this information back in the day.
Yeah.
But
There's
now-
no difference in adult use cannabis and medical cannabis in Massachusetts. It's the same product.
When it comes to
When it comes to
the
flower.
But
And
when it comes to the
concentrates.
edibles, it's different because there's a cap on the edibles. Say if someone's a medical patient and they're diabetic, you're not going to want them to eat 100 lollipops. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. So, and is there a cap on the milligrams in each dose for medical patients? Nope.
No. I mean, yeah, that's why some people honestly go towards their medical cards just to get the high dose edibles or to go to other neighboring states such as Rhode Island or Maine.
Yep. And so we'll talk about medical more in the second segment. And then, so let's talk about we have some different kind of options here. So this is, that's from AMP, that's from Fitchburg. These are just a pack of like pre-rolled joints.
Yes.
Pre-rolls.
Pre-rolls.
Pre-rolls are very convenient because you
Exactly.
don't have to deal with the flower or any of that.
And most people just don't even know how to roll these days. So.
No one rolls their own cigarettes that I know.
That's true.
So us as a retailer only, we sell other people's prepackaged goods, but we do have a production room in our basement and we repackage bulk flower. So we have pre-rolls and then drams of flour that we put together, but that's all we're able to do as a retailer. And then we have to buy from licensed manufacturers and cultivators for our other products.
Yeah, so I know with pre-rolls, it's one of those things where it's just a convenience. Same like looking at the cigarette industry or what tobacco industry is that like typically like they're packed, but of course if you go over to Europe, typically people are rolling their own. But here, like with pre-rolls, it's such a convenient factor is that like you don't necessarily need to roll. As you said, some people don't even know how to roll. I just started rolling like 3 years ago, right? But for the most part, it's a convenience. Same thing with vapes. It's a convenience. It's pocket portability, really. When you have these products, and of course they like to kind of have like the amount of variety, different THC percentages and terpene percentages, would not give people like the flexibility to kind of mix and match.
And the convenient thing with the adult use edibles is they are portioned so that you know what you're getting, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
No more than 100 milligrams in a package and 5 milligrams in a serving. Technically a 10% variant, so you could have a 5.5 milligram or a 4.5 milligram, but it will always be labeled.
That's pretty close.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, for someone who's maybe small, they take one serving and that they know what they're going to feel like. And
And there
if
are
someone
some-
bigger, they take two and they know what they're going to
It is
feel like.
crazy when it comes to edibles because everyone's so different.
Yeah.
Everyone metabolizes different as
Yeah.
well, and it really goes into a lot. I know people who edibles just don't affect them, and I know some people that take a little bit and just be on Mars.
I was just going to say there are some companies that are doing some smaller dose. So like there's a few companies that have like 2.5 milligram gummies, or maybe even some that have like 1. I believe the Hexies, I think, are what
So
go
there
down
are
to 1.
some
No,
that
these are like the
they
M&Ms,
have,
like the
Yeah.
like with the mints that Rev Clinics
Yes.
makes. I know they have some that are, they call them 50-50. They're 50% THC, 50% CBD.
Yeah, the balanced mints are actually, I do like that product because I like something with CBD in it when I consume personally. And there's a lot of great edibles on the market that we try to carry at our store, like 2-to-1 even THC, CBD combo. And it's a really, really nice option for people. They pack a punch, but they're nice.
Well, let's talk about what does CBD do when combined with THC? What are some of the popular products? What are the reasons people are coming and saying, I want something that does this?
They really enhance one another. CBD and THC and terpenes. It's all known as the entourage effect. It's all of them, like Caroline was alluding to earlier. THC is the engine driving it. I compare it to eating the meal. Like I would never eat just like chicken by itself, unless it's like from Popeyes. But you got the chicken, you got the corn, you got the green beans, you got the rice, you get the full meal, you get the full experience. That's what I really would compare it to.
That's the perfect analogy. So like when you do have CBD, it definitely kind of complements each other. And then so like when you have kind of a 1-to-1, like you just have like a lower dose of THC because everyone understands like exactly what THC is going to do. And so with CBD, it's more of the medicinal properties, like whether it makes you a little bit more relaxed or may help for insomnia. There's so many different factors, but with THC, it's one of those very plain, like in your face, that you're going to feel slightly stoned, right? So So, however, like to Devin's point, it's one of those things that's like you kind of, the entourage effect, if you have THC, CBD, all these different terpenes, and all these other additional like minor cannabinoids, you kind of have a full meal versus just an isolated thing versus with the analogy just with chicken. You won't have just chicken, you have everything else. And so that's kind of like the cool thing about like when you look at products that are more like full spectrum or like a balanced act of a 2-to-1, 1-to-1 CBD, THC, or with CBG or CBN. There's so many different cannabinoids and different compositions that you can make, but it's more complementary than anything. And so it just kind of helps provide balance.
So, I mean, we're really just seeing the beginning of the options that are available in this industry. You know, I can only imagine, you know, years into the future where we'll be tailoring the different blends of things to really target to specific problems.
We're already kind of getting there, where you know you're starting to see a lot of products that have some CBN, which is great for sleep. You're starting to get some CBG and CBD mixes. That's really a great antioxidant and medical.
THCV.
You know, adding in some of the variants, some CBDV, some THCV. THCV, if people don't know, is can be an appetite suppressant. So you hear about smoking herb and having the munchies. Well, this is the opposite. So. I've grown something like that myself.
Cannabis pill.
Yes. But we're going to
Can
get
you
there.
imagine?
You know, THCV traditionally grows in more like landrace, equatorial, African strains that very often take a lot longer to grow than your typical plants that people know and grow around here. So it's very difficult for operators to actually grow it, you know, and be financially solvent. But we're going to get there. It just takes some time.
That's the cool thing, like just being hopeful for the future about like, so we're actually excited for the future in terms of like all these different compounds. So like we're all kind of used to THC, we're used to CBD. CBD is everywhere, honestly. Yeah. And then so with THC, like everyone is kind of used to that. So when we start looking at the minor cannabinoids, it's like kind of like the sky is the limit.
The minor cannabinoids, that's like a segment that makes up the THC?
The lesser known one. So THC is a major cannabinoid because it's the most popular one, but there are different cannabinoids that Mike was meaning
that
off
are
earlier.
on the same level as THC.
They're minor. They're just lesser known.
So for example, is that like, of course, at Garden Remedies, like we have like tons of different strains and whatnot that are very high in THC. But then when you kind of like look at the COAs or the certificate of analysis of these or the cannabinoid profiles, you start to see all these other minor cannabinoids start to pop up a little bit. So you start to see the THCV, you start to see the CBGs or whatnot. So all these minor cannabinoids, they all have their individual medicinal properties. And then so once you kind of start to isolate those, and that's when you can start to pretty much start having fun with it. Yeah.
We got options.
Oh yeah, tons and tons of options.
In the last minutes that we have together, let's just talk to the audience and a little bit about maybe those that have never been to a shop, what they need to enter, you know, what's expected, maybe what questions to ask. That's kind of basic things. You need to be 21 plus.
Of course.
And have your ID.
Yeah, so you need all you need is your ID. You need to be 21. It needs to be not an expired license. And you come on in, and I can't tell you how many people are so nervous to visit a dispensary, and it's so refreshing. I love being consumer facing because we get to change that. And we have had so many people tell us, oh my gosh, I wish I came sooner. I didn't realize it was gonna be like this, because we make the shopping experience very comfortable and very educational. And we take time with people. We learn what they're looking for. We are excited about the products that we carry. We're excited to share that. We have fun in our store. We get our staff involved in the process. They're having fun. And so it's just like a feel-good energy type place. And we have people that come in every single day, and people that were opposed to legal cannabis that come to our store every single day. And I think that just needs to be talked about more, because the first day we opened, people were shaking with their licenses in line, and now, fast forward 2 years, and people are proud to come shop at STEM.
Yeah. It all really starts with creating the culture. I think that's a huge part of it, and that's what Carolina STEM has done, is creating a welcoming culture and a welcoming environment. You have to be original. You can't, just be some like iPad store, be a whole bunch of white faces playing reggae music. That doesn't fly, So you gotta really just be true to the game, and it'll show. And questions you should ask as a consumer, you know, where are these products coming from? Who am I backing? Where is my dollar going towards? There are a lot of amazing small-time entrepreneurs in the cannabis space making a lot of awesome products. And then there's a lot of multi-state operators making some not good products. So I'm sure your bud tender will be very knowledgeable on the products and when you go in, and they'll be more than happy to answer those questions for you.
Yeah, that's a good point in terms of just transparency, because a lot of people are now looking at like how was this grown, how was this processed? Because you may have connoisseurs that only want solventless, meaning that it wasn't done with any chemicals. So like your rosin or your keef or whatnot. Then you want people that that will gravitate more towards live resin that's made with hydrocarbons or ethanol, whatever the case may be. But there's a kind of options or varieties for any and everyone. You may have someone that just coming right to the store, they know exactly what they want. As long as it's available, cool. But then you have people that would be nervous to come in. They have no idea. But like once you kind of have these very knowledgeable retail people, they come in, it's like, hey, like what do you need, and really provide the educational piece, because more than likely people would just come in that will kind of have like misguided information. And then so for us to kind of demystify these kind of weird thoughts and whatnot about cannabis, to kind of steer them in the right way, just so like they can actually leave happy with what they just bought. But yeah, transparency, resourcefulness, pretty much answering all those questions, and transparency is key. Yeah.
I guess, you know, I'll keep it short and sweet. If you're looking at the cheapest price and the highest THC, you're doing it wrong. You need to be looking at the terp profile. You need to be, you know, looking for the small growers that, you know, can give a lot more love to every individual plant compared to a very large grower. You know, there's always going to be room for Bud Light and you know, craft beers. Like, it's the same thing. So, you know, look out for that small batch product. And yeah, that's what I got.
All right.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and having this discussion with us.
Thanks.
We are going to take a short break, and then we'll be back and really focusing on discussing the medical cannabis side.
I remember when Fitchburg was the smallest town in the area, but by 1835, it had grown to be the largest town. By 1840 and 50, most Fitchburg residents had become abolitionists. Another early industry in Fitchburg that still continues today is scythe making. Women used to have to spin yarn and weave cloth themselves, but now it was being made in factories, cutting down and exporting its wood to build cities up and down the East Coast, and of course, for making paper. Starting in the 1800s, the population becomes much more diverse. Fitchburg Machine Works expanded widely.
After World War II, Main Street was lively.
Excellent opening move. We played this
opening lines for the Bishop and the Queen.
many times. 10-year-old Alice Lee. Let's see a photo of Alice Lee.
So she plays age 3,
Okay.
and we were thinking that mainly it's to make Luft, they call it,
Luft.
German for air.
At the age 8, he was also able to play blindfold, but most of his exhibitions were where he had sight of the board. And he usually played between 15 and 20 players. Yes, I think taking with the Queen. How did Carissa respond to Bishop C4?
She plays Knight F6, attacking the pawn, Jennifer's pawn.
Welcome back to Discussing Fitchburg Now. I'm Sam Squailia. We are discussing now our second half of our 420 Cannabis Roundtable, where we're really going to focus on the discussions of medical cannabis, really as a medicine, and pathways to recovery with cannabis, and all of that. So I will go around and have you introduce yourselves, my panel. Start with you, Sera.
Hi, I'm Sera Capel. I'm the Weed Faerie. We hold events for the cannabis community to try to bring education to the people. We're holding one on 420, which is going to be great.
My name is Matthew Brace. I'm the founder, COO of Coyle Brothers LLC, a cannabis extraction lab in Harvard, Massachusetts.
Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Dhanabalan. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Health and Hygiene Solutions and Uplifting Health and Wellness. I truly love what I do, and I'm also a cannabinoid medicine specialist in addition to being a family doctor and occupational medicine physician. Thank you.
Sam, thanks for having us. My name is Will Luzier. I'm an attorney. I was the campaign manager for Yes on 4 that legalized marijuana in 2016, and currently I'm helping folks with the licensing and compliance.
All right, thanks for coming on. And Will, you managed to, I think Fitchburg voted overwhelmingly on the Yes on 4 campaign. I think we were 52% to like 47%.
God bless Fitchburg.
Yeah.
So whatever you did, you succeeded.
We were very grateful for the 1.8 million people that saw the wisdom of legalizing cannabis in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and because that was legalizing it for recreational purposes, we had already voted to legalize the medical use of cannabis in, what, 2012?
Yes.
Yeah, and that rollout was problematic. They had to withdraw the applications and refile them. But there are some differences between, some significant differences between medical and legal. There's no dosage limit for edibles for medical facilities. There's a requirement for medical facilities for an application that you have to have $500,000 in the bank. And all of the medical facilities are vertically integrated, which means the cultivation, the manufacturing, and the retail are all owned by one person. So it's a much more expensive option than retail.
Well, that's a great discussion because, you know, in Fitchburg we have 8 licenses, and of those 8, I think maybe four are open, 6 are very, very close to being open, but only 1 is medical. And, you know, everybody says, you know, why aren't they opening more medical options for us in Fitchburg specifically, you know, and in the region? And, you know, it seems like there's a large impediment to that.
Yeah, so for the most part, most of the medical facilities are owned by what they call multi-state operators, people who have a lot of investment money and are able to put that into a vertically integrated system.
It's problematic on another score where if you're vertically integrated, this is not so much true now, but it was during medical, you really have to pay 100% attention to every single product that you make. So you have to pay 100% to your grow, 100% to the flower you put on your shelves. It does not leave you much to make, say, concentrates with or whatever. So in my humble opinion, the vertical integrated, you know, back when we were doing that, the products suffered. You weren't getting what you're getting now with these new craft cultivators who are coming online that are paying such wonderful attention to their grows, to their flowers, which is really why I got into, you know, I decided to do a wholesale manufacturing outfit. I can buy from anybody and I can create a really, really good product, and we pay 100% attention to that. We are of the mind that we stay in our lane. We do what we're really good at, what we know. We support all of these guys, particularly medical. It's incredibly important to us. My CEO and chairman of the board is a very well-known physician and surgeon. So, you know, he, why don't I just tell you why I got involved with this, okay? Because I'm getting there. All right. I was extremely ill in 2015. I was at my house in Vermont renovating renovating a house to put it on the vacation rental market. I spiked a fever of about 104.5. Turns out I had necrotizing pancreatitis complicated by MRSA, further complicated by E. coli. So I was dying. I drove myself to the hospital, parked on the helipad, by the way, which was sort of stupid because they had to life flight me. Anyway, it's a whole other part of the story. But long story short, I had a long illness. It was about a year and a half before I was back on my feet. 27 days in a coma, 3.5 months in the hospital, a month and a half in rehab, learning how to walk and talk and breathe. And of course, like a good Westerner, as soon as I got sick, I stopped doing all the good stuff and I started taking all the Western medicine, and I was getting sicker. So long story short, after I got to back to Massachusetts for better health care, I had a relapse, put me into Mass General Hospital, where I met a very, very interesting Indian pain specialist whose dad was a doctor over in India, and he was very familiar with what I do for a living and what I'm proud of. I was pulling tubes out when I got there because when the ambulance that took me there from Emerson Hospital, Concord, the first thing they did was whack me up on fentanyl. So I was a drug addict, and I was hating my life. So I woke up in Mass General pulling tubes out, furious, throwing things around. This guy came in and laid over my chest and said, "Mr. Brace, you're going to die from withdrawal if you walk out of here right now. Calm down. Let's talk about how we can mitigate these symptoms using cannabis as well as a taper off prescription." I did exactly what this gentleman told me to do, and I was off everything in 31 days with 2 nights of insomnia, and I was on 240 Dilaudid a month, 60 mil MS Contin in the morning and night, benzos like beer nuts. I got off all of that with this, and it took me about 6 months to get my head together. I had PTSD after this ordeal, and once I realized what had happened to me, I was compelled to give back to the industry. That's why Coyle Brothers exists at this point. The surgeon that I just mentioned knows me quite well, and still can't believe I'm walking around with 1/3 of a pancreas and my A1C is at 6. Yeah, so.
I hear a lot of anecdotal discussion about cannabis as, using cannabis as a recovery option, right? As recovering from addiction, especially from opioids, and alcohol.
Yeah.
But I don't see a lot of, in the recovery facilities that we have. I don't hear that.
They're federally funded, so if they're
they're
federally funded,
funded.
it's not going to happen. And that's why I get out and I talk with a lot of veterans. We help them to understand that cannabis and talk therapy can be unbelievably helpful for these guys that are trying to get off the bags of drugs that the VA have them on.
I mean, unfortunately, there are a lot of people in recovery from drugs and alcohol. And with cannabis, the one thing that I, as a medical patient, appreciate is the fact that there's such a dosing difference. Like, I've heard people say that their tolerance is 5 milligrams. I know people that take
20.
much more for their tolerance. The fantastic thing is the one thing that I think it has been kept in the secret as a secret is that cannabis you cannot die as an overdose from cannabis.
Right.
Alcohol, opiates, you can die from overdosing. Most of those medications and alcohol as well, you can die if you take them every single day and suddenly stop. You can also die.
Tylenol is a very highly toxic drug.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cannabis, you can stop at any time, and
It's
you're
non-addictive,
not going to experience
and it's non-lethal.
deadly withdrawal symptoms.
What do you find, Dr. Uma, in your practice?
I'm so happy that you guys have touched upon some of my passions, actually. Number one, I got involved in this in 2012, actually writing recommendations, first in the state of Washington and then in Massachusetts in 2014. And I'm very proud to say I haven't written an opioid in over 15 years. Amazing. It is great because, thank you.
Good to hear.
And we are facing an opioid epidemic right now. And with COVID last year, we had over 100,000 people that we lost. So this,
the overdose has been spiking during COVID and addictions.
absolutely.
The presence of fentanyl and other drugs are.
We're talking about just
crazy.
what people are able to access legally today.
Yeah.
People are able to get these prescriptions that are written by their healthcare providers, and veterans get it delivered in their home. Other patients have it delivered to their home as well, but it is being paid by their insurance companies and reimbursed by a healthcare system. And we are spending $1 trillion, folks, in the United States of America. And what do we have to show for it is what I like to ask the public. What makes 5% of the world's population any different than the rest of the world when we're consuming over 80% of the world's opioids? There's some basic facts that we have to understand. Doctors were not taught about a system that's a mere 600 million years old, and the fact that my mission is to change the stigma and for the world to know about the endocannabinoid system, and I do it through education. And I'm very proud of it. And one day we will be able to say that all healthcare providers know about this system. I can start by saying that all of my patients and the people that will know today know about the endocannabinoid system. Very important facts that I want people to know is 3 facts. We've touched upon some of it. Number 1, nobody in the whole world has ever died from a cannabis overdose. And the reason is the part of the brainstem that controls our breathing and our heart rate cannot be blocked with cannabis. You may feel like you're dying, okay? And that's another conversation we're going to talk about, but you cannot die from it because you cannot block your cardiac, which is cardiac arrest, or your breathing, which is respiratory depression. Alcohol, opioids, and other drugs, including what we have in Tylenol, can kill you.
Central nervous system depressants.
Fact number 2, this medicine was prescribed, and it was in the United States Pharmacopoeia from 1850 to 1942. And everybody needs to know that it was prescribed by doctors. We don't have that liberty today because cannabis is in Schedule 1. But it was prescribed by doctors, and it was in the United States Pharmacopoeia, and it was used for opioid addiction, for alcoholism, and the treatment of insanity. Not the cause of, folks, but the treatment of. And even things like gout that people can understand all over the world. The third fact that we want people to understand is that the United States of America has the patent for cannabinoids. And this was issued to the United States of America on October 7, 2003, stating cannabinoids as an antioxidant and neuroprotectant. Nothing about neurotoxic, folks, but neuroprotectant. The government has known about that it can be used for treatment, maintenance, and prevention of Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, treatment for stroke victims, for cardiac patients. So you need to look this stuff up, and everybody needs to become an educated consumer and customer.
That's a great segue, Dr. Uma, into discussing what are some of the ailments, common ailments. You know, we've touched on, recovery from alcoholism or recovery from opioids, addiction. What are some other common ailments or, that we can start to look for cannabis to help relieve our symptoms?
I mean, pain to me pain is considered a subjective term. Your pain, my pain, his pain. But to me, pain is not just this outward physical thing, but it's also this inward emotional. So I ask my patients, what's your physical or emotional pain? Because when people suffer from anxiety, depression, PTS, and I drop the D, because I don't really like to put people into these buckets and say you're a disease or a disorder. It's post-traumatic stress.
And we all got it.
Everybody's right now with
In
COVID,
different
I
levels.
think everybody has had some type, but it's how we cope with it. And what we understand is that cannabis, I truly say that it should be a first-line option and not the last resort. So patients right now are doled out prescriptions or over-the-counter meds or given their family and friends medications to treat their pain. And I think this is a much more viable option, and the research has been around. And I think this word anecdotal needs to be stopped because every individual is a person, and that is science right there.
Some common ailments that I hear anecdotally is insomnia, anxiety,
Eating issues.
Cancers.
if you have cancer and in order to make yourself hungry.
Not just cancer, with other, a lot of other.
There's not just anecdotal evidence. Israel, who's probably 30 years ahead of us in research, floating around there in the internet, on the interweb, is a video of an electron microscope with THC actually attacking and killing cancer cells. This is a known fact. It's known. Now, I'm an old guy. I'm 55, and I'm a surfer and a snowboarder, and I lead with my right knee. I'm bone on bone and need a knee replacement on my right knee. I got through today, which was I was on my feet all day long on a laboratory floor with a pain solve that is unbelievable. There is nothing I can get at CVS that even comes close.
A pain salve like a THC, CBD, whatever
Yes,
mix,
it's
a topical ointment.
Yeah, most of these folks that are really making the effective ones are using a number of botanicals as well as THC, CBD, CBG, CBN, CBA. It is amazing, and I mean honestly, it's pretty sporty pain when I'm on my feet all day. You go home and my knee's grapefruit. I sit there with this compound, and I just honestly, and it's not even 5 minutes later, I can walk again. And that's absolutely true.
The law says that anything that you and your doctor agree will benefit you more than harm you, you can get a certification. And this young lady could provide that for you because she writes them for you.
So if someone, you could always go to the store and try something adult use. But if you have a medical concern, you can go to your doctor and discuss cannabis as an option. And how does that work?
If they'll talk about it.
Yeah. Now, how does that work when you go to your doctor?
Well, let's talk about who your doctor is, because doctors right now get this thing called a paycheck, which comes from a federal funding agency known as a hospital or Medicare, Medicaid, or wherever their funding is. So patients have either one of three approaches. This is what my patients report. They either talk to their doctor and they say, I can't talk about it because there's not enough research or something that we don't know. And some of them are at least bold enough to say that. Some will say it's wrong and it's just not an option. And patients have even been kicked out of their practice, even some of the pain clinics used to.
Wow.
And this has come a long way. And then there's other doctors that will say, listen, I can't talk about it or I can't write the recommendation, but I know where you can get some information and they can maybe provide a list. And at least I appreciate those healthcare providers and facilities that are doing that, really.
I would second that 100% because honestly, the more, obviously I see a lot of doctors. I have to go and get all kinds of work done every 3 months. I'm seeing a real tailwind with the medical community now, with people being interested in it, actually willing to have conversations about it. My orthopedist, I gave some of my compound to. Her husband has a bad shoulder and she's blown away, but she also is attached to a large organization and they're not hip with cannabis. And if they're not, as Will said, they got a paycheck. You know what I mean?
So find a doctor that is available to discuss cannabis with you.
And there's two tracks. I'm a diplomat in cannabinoid medicine. I call them the mills, but if that's what people have to start and get a card, get a card. But honestly, they're not getting the educations, and I take my business very, very seriously. No doctor, no healthcare provider should be issuing a card. You would never make a diagnosis of diabetes and say, here's your insulin or here's your medicine, see you in a year. Unacceptable, okay? I follow my patients. I actually educate my patients. I spend an hour with my patients to explain this, because this is not like any other medicine. And this is where cannabis use, Dr. Uma says, is personalized medicine. It's personalized. You can't just stop your prescription medications. You can stop your cannabis and have some withdrawal symptoms, but you're not going to die from it. But I actually work with our patients, especially patients that have been on medications for a very long time. And we have patients that are overweight that need to lose weight. We have anorexic patients that need to gain weight. We have patients that are children. My youngest is 2 in the clinic. My eldest is 98. There's death and dying in both spectrums. I have cancer patients, palliative care. I feel that our elderly population, and probably my average age is now about 65 in my clinic of people that we're seeing.
That's the new demographic.
In our last couple minutes together on the show, let's just kind of, if we can target maybe tips or a trick to someone in the audience on maybe, you know, how they can look into medical cannabis as an option.
Sure. So I think your suggestion was a good one. Go to an adult use facility first. There are many people who may have medical conditions who can't get a medical card or don't want to get a medical card. They might be undocumented immigrants, they might be veterans, they might be in public housing, and they don't, and maybe they just don't want to reveal all of their information to the state in order to get that card. And so go to the adult use facility first, see if something works for you, and then contact Dr. Uma or another certifying provider and get a card.
Go low, start slow, you know.
Go low, start slow.
Yep, go low, start slow. Find the most educated bud tender you can. It's a difficult journey, but there's usually at least one person in most of our dispensaries that knows what they're talking about. And
you can also reach out in your community as well. There are a lot of knowledgeable people, a lot of growers, a lot of breeders, a lot of people, like Will said, that make their own salves and butters and oils and are willing to teach you. At our event next week on Wednesday on 420 celebrating, I guess today, it'll be airing today, where, you know, we're gonna have Mike Brace is gonna be there with the social equity, a lot of, I would prefer to call them industry brands, because they're people that are really trying to make their way and find their way in this kind of, you know, new and edgy industry. You know, it's interesting too.
In the last 30 seconds?
I would just tell people, remember, there's always safety first, do no harm is what Dr. Uma says, because there is still precautions you need to take with this medicine. It's not for everybody, and you have to understand that everybody's metabolism is different. So understanding inhalation is a very quick, rapid onset, ingestion is a later onset, and it's a longer duration, and that depending on your liver enzymes and also depending on medications that you're taking, there could be different interactions. So definitely contact me. I'm at Uplifting Health and Wellness, and we are here to really remember 3 words: educate, embrace, and empower. Reach 1, teach 10, teach 1, reach 10. So pass on the information that you learn.
All right. Perfect amount of time. Thank you so much for our panel, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you've learned a lot about cannabis. We'll see you next time.